joined by Emily Aldridge, who is a solicitor at Anthony Collins and trained in-house. So Emily, can you tell us a little bit about your training contract?
So I trained in-house for a social housing provider. I did it over an 18-month period because I had time to count because I'd been a paralegal there for 12 months before. So I did a full-time 6-month commercial property seat. Then I did 3 months out at Anthony Collins, which was commercial contracts. And then I spent my last 9 months doing effectively a split seat. So I did 2 days a week of my commercial property job and then 3 days a week doing my contentious seat, which was split between rent repossessions and disrepair.
In terms of your training contract, why did you decide to train in-house? Did you apply to private practice firms or...?
I applied to a few private practice firms. I did go to assessment days, but unfortunately didn't get offered. I was just starting my next round of applications for private practice when I was offered an in-house training contract. So I had quite a lot of in-depth discussion with the legal team where I trained because it was the first time in a number of years that they'd offered in-house training contracts. So I wanted to make sure that I was still going to get the best training contract that would work for me and that it had been sort of thought through from start to finish what it was going to look like, and throughout those discussions decided that it was going to be a good fit. I liked the amount of client contact that I got there and I'd built up quite good networks because I'd been there for a couple of years before starting, so it seemed like a good idea.
Did you apply to any other in-house training contracts?
No.
So it was because you were a paralegal that's how you heard about that opportunity?
Yeah, and it wasn't something I'd really considered before they offered it to me, to be honest.
How big was the in-house legal team?
It was smaller. The legal team there was split over 3 departments. So there was my legal team, which was me, 2 other solicitors and a legal exec.
So in your opinion, how do you think the training in-house differs from training at a firm?
For my particular training contract, it was different because I still had a full-time role that I needed to complete whilst doing my training contract. And whilst my full-time day-to-day job, I took on more responsibility than what I would have had before and had a bigger caseload and more sort of complex transactions. It meant that doing my final seat was different because I had to do it split over the 9 months and still carry my full caseload as well as do my training contract.
Gosh, that sounds hectic.
It was really busy. I think it also differs in the amount of client contact that you get because you're in the office, so you're just another member of the team, so you get a lot of client contact, whereas I think for most people the more traditional in-house training contract route, it's sort of the amount of client contact you get, particularly in the earlier stages, is a little bit more reduced. And it's probably more heavily supervised because this is sort of in-house, it's more conversations with colleagues than it is always delivering formal advice, so you get to build up that reputation and relationship with your colleagues before you're in a position to be constantly delivering formal advice by email. Or
don't you think the relationship is quite different though, because as you say they're your colleagues, so they kind of have to accommodate your timing as well as their own, whereas when you're in private practice you are very much dictated by clients and what their timescales are. How have you found that transition?
I must say, I don't know what it's like for everyone working in-house, but for me it was still very much me working around their timescales and what the client needed. If anything, I found working in-house that a client's more demanding because they can just come to your desk and ask you to sit in.
I have heard that,
Yeah, they'll come to your desk and ask you to sit in on a meeting, they'll come to your desk and ask you to be on a con call, they'll ask you to look over documents that perhaps a client in a private practice relationship wouldn't request because they're conscious of cost. So I think in a well-established in-house team, you are just seen very much as another colleague that's part of a process, and I think you do sometimes have more involvement.
Do you have chargeable hours, or what happens? How does your progress get monitored as a trainee?
I didn't have any targets. We did time record, but in 30-minute units rather than 6-minute units.
Imagine doing that.
But progress checking really was a lot through my trainee diary to see what I'd been up to and what I'd had on, regular catch-ups with my line manager and regular catch-up with my supervisor in each of my seats.
In terms terms of people that are applying for in-house training contracts, what would you say are the skills that they really need to demonstrate in their applications that are relevant for in-house trainees?
I don't think it's really too dissimilar to private practice training contracts. It's a willingness to learn, being very confident in your ability to deliver advice because of the fact that you do have more client contact, and a lot of it's more face-to-face client contact than it is perhaps via email. I think being in-house and sort of honing those skills there was a really great way to increase my commercial awareness and to be able to get to a point of being able to very quickly establish what it is that a client wants to achieve, because I had so many face-to-face hours of client contact.
What advice would you give someone at an in-house practice trying to develop their network?
To take advantage of as many networking opportunities as possible. If where you work uses a legal panel, are there any opportunities to network with those different firms and get involved? That was definitely one of the things that I struggled with. So there was 3 of us that trained at the same time, but I think because of the nature of all of us effectively doing a full-time position alongside the training contract, our time to network was reduced, and you can't really arrange big socials with 3 people. It was great when I did my private practice seat, because then I started networking with the trainees there, and I kept that contact up when I went back into my in-house role. So I think it's just really looking at the network opportunities that are available and making the most of those. Going to seminars, like free breakfast seminars or free evening seminars, is a great way to build networks as well.
What do you think private practice offers that in-house doesn't for trainees?
I think the biggest thing would be that there's more seat choice in private practice. Again, I suppose it depends on where it is you were to do an in-house training contract, but in my experience I was limited to my seat choices, and obviously in private practice the whole firm's business is to provide legal advice, and they do that across various different practice areas, so there's more variety when it comes to picking seats, which is helpful then in helping to shape ultimately what it is you want to qualify into.
So, have you always lived in Birmingham?
Yeah, I was born in Birmingham, I studied in Birmingham, I've never moved from Birmingham.
Why have you never moved?
I just love Birmingham. I just love Birmingham. I know where I am, I know what I'm doing, I've got quite a good network here now, so I couldn't imagine moving away from Birmingham. It's easy to commute as well into London. I spend quite a lot of time back and forth from London for work, so that works quite well. And the firm, I love the firm that I work at. I love working for somewhere with great social purpose. So for me, it just all works really well.
What do you do in Birmingham, outside of working at your firm?
I'm a trustee for a multi-academy trust based in Birmingham for primary schools, and that's something that I really enjoy, and I think it's really important that we give back, particularly within education. I think as a lawyer it's somewhat difficult to find a good way to utilise your skill set, and that for me has been a great way to be able to give back and feel like I'm actually able to contribute to making a difference. Make sure you research the firms that you're applying for and that you actually have a genuine interest in working there, and that each application is specific to each of the firms, and that you don't just send out a generic application form, covering letter or CV, because that's really important. I think it's important to make sure that you're going to be happy in the city that you're going to be working in and the firm that you're going to be working at, and consider what network you have around you whilst you're there, because training contract, whilst it's a great opportunity, it's really fun, it can sometimes be quite stressful, so it's good to have good links around you to support you through that time. Think about what it is that's going to make your application stand out from other people's. Are you involved in charities, or are you in sports clubs, things like that, particularly if those are links that you have to the city in which you're applying to, because they're things that you can continue alongside your training contract, which will help build more of a network.
Thank you, Emily, for joining us on this episode of Legally Brum.
Thank you for having me, and best of luck everyone with your training contract applications.